Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Spotlight, a Women Speak CRE podcast with our special guest, Heather Ewing, who is also a CCIM. Heather is a founder and CEO, a retail and restaurant broker, a commercial real estate strategist, and an international marathoner. She's the founder and CEO of Abstract Commercial Real Estate, specializing in retail and restaurant brokerage with an emphasis in mixed-use developments in the great city of Madison, Wisconsin. Known as the Queen of Downtown Madison, Heather blends over 40 years of local insights with a bold and creative perspective to serve tenants, landlords, developers, and investors. Heather believes relationships are the backbone of commercial real estate, and she secures off-market properties for developers and investors, pairing strategic deal-making with an art-forward marketing approach to maximize visibility and bring deals across the finish line. Heather contributes to various commercial real estate boards and organizations, serving as the RVP for Region 7 in CCIM, and was also the president of the Wisconsin CCIM chapter in 2024 and the president of the Commercial Brokers Group in 2024. She is a member of the City of Madison Bid Board since 2018. Heather is the founder and host of Heather Ewing, the CRE Rundown podcast, and she's also the founder of the annual Bright Lights Run Walk to benefit Girls on the Run. She has been featured by iHeartRadio, CARW, DMI, NAOP, Channel 3000, Midwest Real Estate Journals, and others as a sought-after national speaker on commercial real estate and mindset. As an international marathoner, Heather has raced in Berlin, London, Paris, Milan, New York, Boston, and more, bringing the same great discipline, endurance, and drive to every deal and audience she's in front of. Welcome, Heather, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Spotlight, a Women Speak CRE podcast. I'm your host, Allison Weiss, and I am thrilled today to have our special guest, Heather Ewing, join us here on The Spotlight. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Allison. It's a joy to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited, and I know we have a lot of ground to cover. So I'd love to get started just by having you tell our listeners a bit about your pathway into commercial real estate and how you found yourself in brokerage specifically, because I know that was a very interesting journey.
Yeah, definitely. I've always joked that people either take the straight path or they take the winding, and I was definitely the latter. So I graduated with 2 business degrees from college. Neither one fueled me, but it was one of those I went the safe route.
Yeah.
And it was in my early 20s that I had a life-altering car accident. And what really shook my life up and really altered it in a major way became one of my best blessings, of course, years later. And with that, I started asking the bigger questions of who am I? What am I? What is my life purpose? All of these questions that you typically encounter in your mid 50s, right?
Yes.
And with that, I started trying different arenas from personal training to art. I had always loved art, to coaching, different things of that nature. And there were things that I liked and I disliked. And then I got into real estate in 2010, but then my focus really shifted into the commercial sector. It started with property management, which I knew for me, my personality wouldn't speak to my heart, but I knew it would keep me in an arena that I wanted to grow in. And with that, I got my sales license and my brokerage license. And then in 2014, then I got into the sales and leasing. And with that, it was a whole new pool, right? That's when I got introduced to retail, the restaurants, mixed use developments. And that all started with a conversation. A guy I was dating at the time, we were at a networking event, and he was like, "Oh, my friend TJ, he's a broker. You should talk to him." I had never considered commercial brokerage, right? And with that, I spoke with TJ, and he's like, "Oh, you should talk to a few firms." And so I ended up doing that, just assuming I would go office. And thank God for me, again, it's a personality fit. Thank goodness for retail restaurants. So that's where I ended up, and I worked in that for 5 years. And then I founded Abstract in April of 2020.
I love that. And I
Yeah.
know the path to self-discovery is one that people often find by accident. In your case, by a literal accident. I guess tell me what, maybe how your path differed and when that fork in the road came, some of the questions or doubts or fears that you had about switching gears and moving from what I think had been more operational focused kind of work and a career path into a much more entrepreneurial career path within commercial real estate.
Right. So I grew up one of four, and it was one of those where it was very much dot every I, cross every
Mhm.
T, lock in your 2 weeks vacation,
Yeah.
every increase in your salary, shift that into your 401k, things of that nature, right? Which
Mhm,
is, there's pluses and minuses of everything, right? So I think the
mhm,
beauty is as an adult, you get to kind of create your tool belt of what you liked and what you want to add in.
mhm,
So I spent 11 years in operations. That was one of my two business degrees. And with that, I just felt so empty. And I remember I
mhm.
call it dead in the eyes.
Yeah.
So if you go out in any city and just observe if you're driving down the road around that 5:30 uh,
Mhm,
time frame, and you look across, a lot of people are just they're physically there, but they're
mhm.
dead in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I've always said that pain will push you
Mhm,
and vision will pull you. So I
mhm,
got to the point of I really didn't care. I was miserable, just
mhm.
miserable. And then I was like, oh, I'm in my early 20s. I have a long time to go. And that
Yeah.
to me was like horrible. And
Mhm,
so that's where I did just start trying things. And I think in talking to people, of course, now many years later, people want to know from the comfort of home that
mhm,
if they try A, they'll get B and it'll
mhm,
deliver C. And they want
mhm,
the sure win. And they want
mhm,
to know that any time spent, any money invested is going to prove out their hope.
mhm,
And hope doesn't work.
mhm.
And you have to roll up your sleeves and get dirty and try different things and know that it's going to be ugly at times. It's going to be
Yeah.
life giving at times.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to manage all of those different emotions
Mhm,
and the financials
mhm,
and find peace with it. And I think everyone has certain levels of risk and comfort.
mhm,
I kind of chuckle of I've never considered myself a risk taker. And then I
mhm.
look back and it's like, well, I guess I kind of became one, but it was strategic, but also it was a heart's calling that later I think was also better tempered financially because
Yeah.
you learn, right? And in any entrepreneurial journey, let alone commercial, you
Mhm.
learn in a very steep way. And I say those learning curves, you don't forget them because
Yeah.
they're in your face and they're
Mhm,
financial, emotional, spiritual, everything.
mhm.
So you learn quickly not to repeat certain things. And in that sense, I think commercial real estate is one of the best self development programs you can ever enlist
Yeah.
in, personally,
Absolutely.
professionally, network, artistry. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a fascinating topic.
Absolutely. And I would imagine that it might not have made sense to the folks around you in your life, your family members. How did you talk to them about these different changes and these different experiments that you were embarking in? And did they understand, or was it a journey that you kind of had to go on yourself?
I think, different stages, different experiences. And
Mhm,
just to kind of give you an idea of, I broke my neck, my atlas, the very
mhm,
top bone, and
mhm,
then I crushed my face. So this is all titanium. They
mhm,
cut through, peeled it back, rebuilt my eye orbit,
mhm.
stitched my eyelids, stitched through my nose, everything. Like I am extremely fortunate. And that's where to this day, even, gosh, I've been alive longer than how many years ago that accident was. So I think it was
Mhm,
like 28 years ago now.
mhm,
I'm extremely thankful, but I think so much of life is kind of consulting in with your heart and soul. And I think
mhm,
after an accident like that, I think it does give you wings in certain ways
mhm.
where it was just so intense and also different comments from strangers or people that you knew of like, oh, I'm so sorry. you were so pretty. Right. And then
Yeah.
the irony is then too, when I sold my art, which is also very personal, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of learn that everyone sees things so differently. And I think a lot of times when people are in uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, they don't know what to say and they just kind of go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I've also
Mm-hmm.
learned that you can't take it personally. Everyone is going to give advice off of their
Mm-hmm.
perception, their life
Mm-hmm.
experiences, their fears, their joys, everything else. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, with family, they supported at different points, but I think they also probably thought, like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, that was a
Mm-hmm.
really hard hit. What happened, honey? So varied over the years. And I think so much of it is, I think I focus a lot of the here and now and what
Mm-hmm.
can you salvage from the past versus all the pains. And I think
Yeah.
journaling and painting and therapists over the years have been really helpful, but also mentors and guides
Mm-hmm.
and friendships, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always say no one gets a free pass.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to have their hardships. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like no one gets a free pass.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes money is really easy, but then there's also a lot of expectations and duty, and it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
maybe what they want. And then in other situations, maybe it's the flip, but there's so many different iterations. You can just never judge a book by its cover. And that's where, too, um, I've kind of laughed at people are like, oh, well, you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of laugh because I think also, the beauty is at 51, I feel like I have excavated a lot of who I am in my early
Yeah.
years that
Yeah.
a lot of people don't start until now. And I
Yes.
also realize that everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't have to accept that. That's their thoughts, and they're just really reflecting their thoughts and feelings, and that's okay. I'm not perfect either. And we're all
Yeah.
here to grow and I think to level up and to also help other people do that. I think it's a privilege, a right, and it's also an
Mm-hmm.
obligation that everyone should want to share, I think, as we learn things so that others don't have to pay that heavy price.
Absolutely. And I know that you have found your way, and not just as a business owner with Abstract Commercial and in your personal life with some of the half marathons and the marathons that you've done.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about finding your way in commercial real estate and then eventually realizing that you were meant to be out on your own and start your own firm and what that journey was like.
Definitely. So the physical element, the running started because I had learned early on that there's
Mhm.
positive and negative ways of handling stress. So
Yeah.
having that one under my belt, I commercial real estate stressful. I came
Hmm.
into it self-funded. I used my
Hmm.
401k,
Hmm.
and it was one of those, it was all on me, right?
Hmm.
And I did take that bet on me. And it was stressful. And so I thought, what's a healthy way of offloading this?
Hmm.
Running. Oh,
Hmm.
great. I'm starting to sleep better. And then
Hmm.
after so many weeks, you would level off and it's like, I'm not sleeping again. Right. So over
Hmm.
time, then I started running half marathons. And then I think I racked up about 26 of those. And I got into it pretty heavy, right?
Hmm.
I think I taught place in the top 3 for my age group in 50% of those. So I was really proud
Wow.
of that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really dug in, right? And then after a while, I realized I just got too comfortable because I would run
Mhm.
12 every Saturday anyways. And I find nature and the outdoors just very restorative and also really great for deal flow and coming
Mhm.
up with creative solutions and things of
Mhm.
that nature. And then over time, just knowing that I had more in me. And I had
Mhm.
ran one marathon 17 years prior, hated
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
My verbiage was never again.
Yeah.
And I realized though that, well, the mindset, the skill set, and the work ethic per se that I had 17 years ago was very different than where I was now.
Mhm.
So, wanting some different changes, I agreed when my brother and sister in law said, let's run New York. I slept on it and I was like, now is the time.
Yeah.
So, I signed up for it, ran that. And I think anytime you push yourself beyond the boundaries,
Mhm.
you really do see more of what you're made of, right? And
Mhm.
I think with running too, when you're pushing hard, it also really brought to my attention the different times I had shorted myself.
Mm.
And that was big. And I think so many times people look externally when
Mhm.
the magic really is inside. And with that,
Yeah.
then I also started thinking of how do I want my commercial real estate career to go? And there were aspects I liked and aspects I didn't. And I started
Mhm.
talking with other firms. And at the same time, I knew with my entrepreneurial spirit
Mhm.
that I didn't want to be in a large firm. For me,
Mhm.
that's just not the right fit. I'm a very creative person and I would
Mhm.
feel just tied down. And
Mhm.
I had already done that for 11 years in my
Yeah.
early years, if you want to say. And again, it's so much of knowing yourself because as
Mhm.
you know yourself, you can make better decisions for yourself. And with
Mhm.
that, just negotiations with the broker that I was with, they didn't line up for us despite numerous tries. So I started Abstract in the beautiful April 2020. And of course, that was wild. And
Yes.
I think one of my greatest skills is resourcefulness and also
Mhm.
eye on the prize. And
Mhm.
it's easy to get dragged down with the what ifs and could have,
Mhm.
should haves, but something I've learned over the years with any deal, if you're
Mhm.
stuck looking in the rearview mirror, you can
Mhm.
kiss everything that you're working on and future forward in a hot
Yeah.
second. You don't
Yeah.
have that luxury. And
Mhm.
again, if it hadn't have been so intense in all of those years of
Yes.
learning that mindset and vision forward, like
Mhm.
you do a quick replay of like what did I do well, what did I do wrong, how could I have done it differently, and then you
Mhm.
clean the plate and you bring it forward. So that really helped me, but it was daunting and it was scary, but also was exciting. And I think
Yeah.
that's where what helps people, because they're like, well, how do I know when it feels right? Right. And for me, I know
Yeah.
where I sense the truth in my body. I also know
Yeah.
when there's fear and excitement that
Yes.
it's a good indicator of, okay, it's time to up level and then create your plan, write it out and
Mhm.
put it together. And I think that's also where the marathoning discipline,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if you want to or not, right? That's part of
Yes.
adulting. And
Yes.
nothing is ever going to be perfect. And I think there's a lot of
Yes.
fairy tales that are sold to us in the United
Mhm.
States and anywhere
Yep.
that kind of like you're going to fall in love and it's going to be forever with Prince
Yes.
Charming sometimes, but looking at
Yes.
stats, not nearly enough.
Yeah.
Same with careers that if you land in the right one, and this is something I didn't realize earlier, I just thought doors should open more easily. I shouldn't have this level of challenge and things like that with my earlier businesses that I started.
Mhm.
And so it's again, you learn from everything, harvest what you learned, and that
Mhm.
all got put into commercial real estate and abstract. So it's a neat culmination.
I love it. And I know that the path hasn't necessarily always been linear. It hasn't always been easy,
Mhm.
but it seems like it has revealed to you who you really are and what you're made of. Tell me a little bit about finding your niche within commercial real estate and about how you show up in such an authentic and unique way. I think oftentimes when I look on firm websites, a lot of folks might look the same. They might even pitch the same. I think, one of the amazing things about you and your approach to the business is that you are authentically who you are. You bring your full self into pitches and client relationships. Tell me about how you think about that and how you have woven your personality into your business and the way that you conduct business.
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of it stems back to the early days of just being miserable. And I vowed never on God's green earth will I put
Yes.
myself through that ever, ever
Yeah.
again. And I think that's also why cold calling and other things to me are pretty simple because
Mhm.
it's almost like you still remember those early days of just
Yes.
how much you hated going. And
Yes.
different things of that nature. So I feel so fortunate to
Hmm.
be able to run my own ship. And I think with
Hmm.
that too of, when I was looking at it of you look at the market of what
Hmm.
do we have in the market
Mhm.
what are my skills? What do I kind of think the other brokers are? Because Madison's a small community
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we're all very niched. And I think you
Mhm.
see that throughout the United States. There's so much competition and there's so much brain power and also computer
Mhm.
power, now AI, that
Mhm.
you really have to be the best in an industry to be able to do well.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're going to be scrambling the whole time.
Yeah.
And with that, retail and food, I've always loved
Mhm.
shopping. I've always loved eating. I was like, this was made for me if I only knew about this back in the 90s, right?
Mhm.
And so with that, it was really having the market knowledge. And a lot of
Mhm.
that was through cold calling, through
Mhm.
canvassing, which Beth Azor got me into.
Yes.
Hitting the streets. I had always been a big networker and I had
Mhm.
lived here my entire life. And
Mhm.
so you bring all of that together and then also different corporate experience over those
Mhm.
11 years. It brings together a nice tool belt, but also it just really this is going to work. It's not a
Mhm.
question, it's how.
Mhm.
And so I think when you've
Mhm.
already decided, and I think everyone has to see the end before they begin. And that's
Yes.
how I quit my job originally
Yes.
in 2007 to then pursue, my heartfelt endeavors.
Mhm.
And it's really what do you bring in your skill
Mhm.
set? How are you different?
Mhm.
And being a small boutique firm, I really
Mhm.
had to capitalize on that. And
Mhm.
it's one of those, I think a lot of brokers all have pretty unique personalities. And that's a nice
Mhm.
thing because you'll have several brokers within any niche, but each
Mhm.
personality is different. And again, it's not to say one's right or one's wrong. It's
Mhm.
aligning with the client that is going to best connect with how you present things, your manner, your values, your ethics,
Mhm.
your speed, your tempo, all of those different things. So, in that sense, they are buying you.
Yeah.
And with that, I think it's solving so many problems in a creative manner. And I think
Mhm.
that's allowed me to do the different deals and also to handle the mixed use and also working with the big campus developers that are coming into town or other investors that are really in need of that market knowledge and lease information is never published. I've never published that in the 11 years.
Mhm.
The only thing is sales. So you can obtain that, but the leases is what roll up into those
Mhm.
investment sales and things of that nature. So I think it was also understanding the valuable information I had that also gave me a platform to catapult from. And then with that
Mhm.
knowledge, it was speaking engagements locally, regionally,
Mhm.
TV on
Mhm.
various things, radio across the nation. And also just presenting things in an artful manner that was uniquely me, utilizing my gifts and it's a different voice. And
Mhm.
with that, I think it all just worked together with a really good work ethic,
Mhm.
discipline, and commitment. And
Mhm.
of course, there's still room for me to improve greatly. There is for all of us. But I think that's also
Mhm.
one of the really neat things about commercial real estate.
Mhm.
And it's varied social media, the different events,
Mhm.
and it's providing value. And I think what people forget is they go in there and it's almost like they want to shove a vendetta down someone's throat. And who wants it?
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I
Yeah.
kind of enjoy cold calls that I get. I'm like, "Oh, let's see how they approach this. And, is there something I can learn in this?" And
Mhm.
it's providing value. It's
Mhm.
that simple, and I
Mhm.
think people lose sight of that, and they get stuck on their initiative, and just doesn't work. It might for a short term, but it's not going to work long term.
Absolutely. And I know that when you came out of the gate with abstract and you hit the ground running, you made a big splash in the market.
Right.
You had a huge number of listings. Talk to me about that success, how people reacted to that success, and maybe how you realized that doing it your own way was going to be rewarding, not just intrinsically, but also
Mhm.
financially rewarding.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think anytime you do things differently, you're going to have the camp that thinks it's great and it's exciting. You're going to have the camp that wants to kind of shut you down. And I think that's part of life. And again,
Mhm.
whose voices do we want to focus on? But I do recall kind of chuckling of someone who had reached out and just said, Heather, this isn't residential. Commercial's different. Why are you putting your picture on things? And I kind of laughed and think like, why do you care? Right?
Uh-huh.
It's
Uh-huh.
not yours. So you do you. And
Uh-huh.
to me, my mindset was, all right, people know Heather Ewing, but they
Uh-huh.
don't know who abstract commercial real estate is. So what's the quickest way I can bridge the two?
Uh-huh.
Like I'm gonna slap my picture on everything.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I did. And it was great because it drew the line very quickly. Also, just having a lot of listings and different things of an MLS system said you can't post so many broadcasts. There can only be one property a certain time frame. And it's like, well, I have 22 listings. So if you break it out throughout the month, you're gonna see abstract all
Yeah.
the time. Right. And
Uh-huh.
and it's one of those. So what I did with that is I just did more social media. So
Uh-huh.
I ratcheted it down to uh, play within the rules. But then I went on to other MLS sites also and then
Uh-huh.
social media. So I think it's one of those, if you let every comment hinder you, you're never going to get anywhere. And
Uh-huh.
honestly, when I was looking into possibly starting my own firm years earlier, they said I would never make it. They just
Yeah.
said, you won't make it. There, you're not new in the marketplace.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, right? But if you think
Yeah.
about that, so many people use that to stop. And when I reflect back of like, okay, why didn't I?
Uh-huh.
I think for me growing up, there were so many rules. Like it was this, you can't, you can't, you can't, you can't. And so as an
Uh-huh.
adult, I'm like, watch me. Right. And that's where
Yeah.
you temper it and things of that nature. But I think it's a message I would love for people to remember is that think of those different experiences that you had that probably just cut to the soul at the time,
Uh-huh.
right? And they
Uh-huh.
hindered you at different times, but other times I always say, what doesn't kill you, it gives you
Uh-huh.
wings.
Yeah.
And as much as it hurts, salvage the
Uh-huh.
good. What can I learn from this? How can I use this to catapult you forward?
Uh-huh.
And 200%. So I've tried to not be an all or nothing person, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I'm the type when I decide I'm like the bull in the china cabinet and we're going and it's happening. There's
Yeah.
no looking back. Like it's forward. So um I'm a very direct person. I always say,
Uh-huh.
in different deals of I'll share what I like and dislike. And at the end of the day, I always tell people that they know their business from a
Uh-huh.
brokerage aspect, my experience. These are the different points. You use that to make the best decision for you and your comfort level and your business. And a lot of people like that. So that's worked
Yeah.
well for me. But again, I'm not for everyone and not everyone's for me. And I've learned the power of no, of if it's a rough first conversation, for me, that it's a pass.
Yeah. It doesn't
And
usually get easier. I've
no,
learned.
no. And in the
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
days, right? Like you
Yeah.
try, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. And it's been painful for everyone. And it's like, I don't want to have my energy spent there. I don't want them feeling
Yeah.
that way. I don't want to feel that way. And if you just say no to that, then you open to all these other possibilities. And there's
Uh-huh.
all the possibilities because you take the steps and you
Uh-huh.
think creatively. Where can I go? How can I do this differently? And it's also really understanding who your clients are,
Uh-huh.
what they like, what they dislike, where do they shop, where do they travel.
Uh-huh.
A lot of mine, like the different developers I work with, they're
Uh-huh.
bike enthusiasts, bicycle,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
right? And they admire that I'm a runner. And I think it's a mutual
Yeah.
affinity where I've always felt like I'm almost like the little sister of all these guys,
Yeah.
right? And so there's an affinity and respect. And that was something I learned in my early 20s
Uh-huh.
that in business, because I was always in male populated arenas, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That they respected sports. And I was like, great. Again,
Uh-huh.
draw the line. And
Yeah.
I love sports. So, oh,
Yeah.
perfect, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you found a way to build that common ground and that common language of respect where I think I have experienced at other stages earlier in my career, you kind of have to choose how you're going to relate to the men in the industry. Was that kind of a conscious choice, or was that just kind of a development based on your, natural affinity for running and athletics, or how did you navigate that maybe in the earlier parts of your career and understand kind of the balance that you wanted to strike? Because there is kind of a fine line that is walked at events, especially when drinking is involved and things like that. How did you navigate that earlier in your career?
Definitely. Well, interestingly enough, a lot of it came by way of me wanting to be myself. And
Okay.
it was so interesting because I was working with a guy that I had worked with on a development a couple years prior. And we were talking about the running things because I had kind of sprinkled it in like once in a great while,
Hmm.
right? Like, let's test. Is there a way that I can talk about something that I love that I see all the similarities of
Yes.
marathoning and commercial real estate? Can I start these little discipline, commitment, mindset things, different races in
Yeah.
other countries? And people were responding really well. And I was like, gosh, I'm getting so much more interaction on that than other
Hmm.
posts on leasing of different
Hmm.
sales of these client successes. I'm like, oh, okay. This is fascinating, right? And I think so much of business in any arena is,
Yeah.
what are people wanting more of? What are they
Hmm.
buying? Where do the dollars come in the door?
Hmm.
And with that, then I started sharing more about it. And it was neat because people really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
And I wear tennis shoes.
Hmm.
It's like I wore Hokas for a long time. People would be like,
Yeah.
oh, I went out and got some Hokas, Heather. Right. So
Yeah.
those were some of the conversations at networking events. Then in some
Hmm.
networking too, if I was coming down the home stretch before a marathon, I'd wear
Hmm.
I'd wear my tennis shoes there too. I'm dressed up, but then you've got your tennis shoes. So it
Hmm.
kind of became a staple type thing and to be
Yeah.
expected. And then people would want to know where the marathon was. And then I started getting sponsored for it, like when I ran Boston last year. And then
Amazing.
people are like, when are you running Tokyo? Like, I want in on that one. Well, to me, I
Yeah.
was like, my heart's delight of like, how great. And I think for me too, is I was the little tomboy when I was little.
Yeah.
I was playing, I
Hmm.
was muddy with the boys, all of
Hmm.
that stuff. And for me in the business realm, I just think it keeps it simple because I think also I'm
Hmm.
revered almost like a little sister, almost of
Hmm.
one of them, but not a guy by any
Yeah.
means. 'Cause I'm a
Yeah.
very feminine woman. But
Yes.
I think it's one of those that was always my presentation. It was the
Hmm.
athlete, and they were
Hmm.
interested about the times and this and that and
Yeah.
travels and then two, I don't go out with just a guy for drinks.
Hmm.
It's not my thing, and I think everyone has to decide what's for them because, again, by
Yes.
no means am I saying this for other people. I'm just saying for myself, my comfort level and what's worked. I go out
Hmm.
with groups for cocktails
Yeah.
and deal stuff. Yeah, I love that. But I also
Yes.
too, I think with all the running, like I don't drink very
Yeah.
much and I'm a complete lightweight and I like
Yeah.
to feel good and I like to perform well in my day, in my evening, and then in the evening I'll have a solid run or maybe the following morning. So in that sense too, it's minimal alcohol. So it's also
Yeah.
I'm in a lot earlier and I think I'm just not in the room when a lot of other things are happening
Yeah.
because of the sport, but I feel like it's respected, but also it's something that I love doing. So in that
Yeah.
sense, I'm fulfilling for myself, my lifestyle, and what I want. And it just seems to work out easily with that. So I'm very,
Yeah.
very fortunate because I know there's a lot of things that happen. And I think it's
Mhm.
unfortunate. And I think too, I've never been in the big firms with all, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I've always
Sure.
been in a very small brokerage type experience. So I think also it
Yeah.
minimizes kind of the
Exposure maybe.
gang mentality, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, when there's not as
Mhm.
much energy propelled into something, it's less
Yes.
likely for any bad behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things when I think about you, Heather, is that you are so authentic in sharing your story, your journey, the learnings that you're gaining from these different races that you're running and things like that. And one of the things that I think more folks ought to learn from that is that when you put little bits of yourself out there and you allow yourself to be seen by people, the response that you can get is much more personal, much more supportive, much more aligned because you are showing people who you are. And that magnetizes, I think, the right people who have similar feelings. And similar levels of drive and commitment and desire, and maybe, specifically those athletic interests. But it helps you to find your people, and it helps to build that bridge. And there's so many people out there who think, I'm going to just put up my tombstones, my closing notices, I'm going to put up my listings. And I think what you're saying is that when you allow yourself to be seen in this way, when you share, your qualifying times, and you share that you've just completed this training circuit or finished this race, it allows people to feel like they know you. And that's just the first most important part of the know, like, and trust factors. And you're building that bridge as opposed to maybe showing off or using it as a megaphone to promote yourself.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
too, when you go to the heart of the matter, it really is just a deep desire to live
Mhm.
fully. And that's my
Yeah.
life motto. And that's something that,
Yeah.
again, originated back to my car accident.
Yeah.
But to me, I want people to have a better life. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I love learning from other people. Success leaves clues. How did they get to where they're at? What did they need to learn? What did they need to let go of? What types of
Mhm.
skill sets are required for that next level? And for me, fitness, the marathoning has just been a huge thing because I think you encounter so many old stories that I
Mhm.
told myself, right?
Yeah.
And you realize that it's like, it can be a very emotional journey on these different runs because you just realize,
Mhm.
like, wow, I held myself back by about 7 or 8 years because I felt this about myself.
Yeah.
And why? But then the
Yeah.
beauty is that you hold the key, so you get to choose to think differently, and I think certain things are always gonna pop up in
Mhm.
everyone's mind, but I think as we're more aware of it, we
Mhm.
shine the spotlight, it's like, I don't choose to see it that way. I'm going to choose this." And you have to choose within every day
Mhm.
several times. Right? Just like with runs,
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
choose, like, how bad do you want to place in your top
Yeah.
3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I joke that it's a little sadistic, but it helps you to fully commit because
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable,
Yes.
right? When you're putting out so much energy
Yes.
and then you're releasing some of those old stories and you can't hold both at once. And I
Yes.
think that's also what I love about it is that it forces you that you have to make the choice in the moment.
Yes.
Are you going to feel the fatigue of that old story through your body? Or are you going to say, kiss my back end and this is who
Yeah.
I am today and
Yeah.
let's take it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's runner's high is real. I get excited talking about it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many analogies that you can make between running and the commercial real estate industry. I guess, what would you say, thinking about that mindset that you bring to running, and also thinking about the market and the way that the market has fluctuated these last, especially 5 years? How does your self talk kick in when there is a deal that falls apart, or there is a day where you maybe don't want to put your feet on the cold floor in the morning and go, show a listing or what have you? How do you keep that strength and that drive and that forward momentum when it feels like there's so much that you can't control in the market?
Definitely. Well, I think I'm a big fan of morning and evening routines or rituals, if you want to
Mhm.
say. And
Mhm.
I've meditated for years, and that's a whole nother story for another podcast. But to me, it's always taking a few minutes is just calming. And so some
Mhm.
mornings it's sitting with my coffee in the meditation, and sometimes it's a morning run.
Mhm.
And with that, I think it's really envisioning the day of how do you want to
Mhm.
feel? And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter how you feel like you always have to get up, and I think that's something I
Yes.
learned from a young age of
Mhm.
you always have to take the step forward, and you know that after a few steps, you're gonna start feeling better. But I
Yeah.
think it's also knowing that just the disappointment of a deal or this or that, like,
Mhm.
that's temporary,
Mhm.
as are the exciting deals that cross the finish lines and things of that nature. I think
Yeah.
it's really feeling that I felt like I shorted myself in my earlier years
Mhm.
by not believing in myself, by, um, you know what I mean? Like, I remember
Yeah.
in my early 20s just feeling like quite a victim. And then I
Mhm.
remember of as time went of like, no, it's not acceptable. Like, I acknowledge different things happen, but I also acknowledge that I went along with maybe thinking that I wasn't good enough or I wasn't
Hmm.
this and this, that, and the other thing. But I think it's really, as an adult, you
Yeah.
can't blame other people, you can't blame circumstances, and it's really doing the deep dive to
Hmm.
come to terms with them and to accept it, and also having the vision and clarity of who do you want to be and rolling up your sleeves and trying that. So with different deals, the market, I personally don't put a lot of attention on the
Hmm.
market. There's
Hmm.
always going to be good times, there's going to be challenging times. So
Yes.
to me, people, when they're complaining about all these different factors, is it real? Yes. But like
Yeah.
anything, where's that going to get you? Spend
Yeah.
your time, money, energy on providing something that others aren't. What might
Hmm.
be ahead of this? How can you
Hmm.
creatively provide value? What are
Hmm.
resources you can offer? What's knowledge that you can offer?
Hmm.
Right. And so it's
Hmm.
all mindset. And that's why,
Hmm.
as I train for these different marathons, I usually do a post every day on my personal Facebook
Hmm.
of different things, and also occasionally on LinkedIn, that
Hmm.
you choose how your day is
Hmm.
going to go. You can't control the factors, but you're going to choose, was it a bad day or was it a
Yeah.
good day?
Yeah.
And I'm big on writing gratitude of,
Hmm.
there's always things to be grateful for. Sometimes it can be really challenging depending on, maybe there's a sick loved one or maybe
Hmm.
something really crazy happened
Hmm.
on a deal, but you your thoughts, your vision are going to steer your life, and that all rests on your shoulders. So
I
I
love
take
that.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I take it very personally.
Well, it sounds like you have that feeling that I also have, that I am so lucky based on all the things that have happened to be here on this earth in this moment doing the work
Definitely.
that I'm doing, and I'm not going to waste a minute of it.
Right. Well, and if you
Yeah.
think about it too, like you make the hard choices so that you
Mhm.
can have a life that you like. And again,
Yes.
so few people start out in a career that they love and
Yes.
make a living off of,
Yes.
right? And a good one
Yes.
at that.
Yes.
So it's curate your life to who you want to be and how you want to live, and find gratitude and learn, and don't repeat those tough lessons.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation, Heather. I am
Loved
so
it.
grateful for all of this wisdom. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Spotlight of Women Speak CRE podcast.
And thank you, Allison. It's been a true joy connecting with you further on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks, Heather.
You bet.
We hope you enjoyed this special episode of the Spotlight, a Women Speak CRE podcast with our very special guest, Heather Ewing. There were so many great parallels between running marathons and having a long-standing successful commercial real estate career. I'm going to have to go back and add some notes. Heather is just an expert on mindset. She's an expert on everything retail and restaurants, and is doing it all her way, which I think is a great message. We don't have to adhere or conform to others' ideas or opinions of us, or what the market at large looks like or feels like or sounds like. We can be ourselves, and Heather is a very successful commercial real estate leader doing just that. Thank you so much, Heather, for all these wonderful insights. And thank you to all of our listeners of the Spotlight, a Women Speak CRE podcast. If you haven't yet left us a review, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform where you listen. And share the episode with someone who you think it could benefit. That's how we continue to grow. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight, a Women Speak CRE podcast.